What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Joannis or Joe Hatagwa. I'm a Sierra Leonean American living here in Accra, Ghana. And if you want to know what I think about the Netflix series Young, Famous, and African, then this is the live for you. All right, we are live across all platforms. We're live on Instagram Live, we're live on YouTube, and we're live on both pages on Facebook. I'll give a second for people to start joining. Let me know if you guys can hear me by giving me a thumbs up. Mr. Bounce Los Angeles, what's up? Let me know if you can hear me. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. I meant to actually, I think this is I don't even know if that's the YouTube link. I don't want to send it if it's not the link to the YouTube channel. But guys, if you want to join me on YouTube Live, you can go head over to the YouTube channel and join me there. But let me know if you guys can hear me. Give me a thumbs up as a comment so I know that you can hear me. And same thing on YouTube. The YouTube guys, let me know if you guys can hear me. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me on YouTube. All right, cool. Mr. Bounce Los Angeles says you can hear me. Cool. All right, so I'll get into the content here in just a second. Let me just make sure somebody wanted to go live. Who's this that wants to go live? Let's see who it is. Moni wants to go live. I'll go live with Moni really quickly while we wait for some people to get on. Moni, did you want to go live? She declined. I thought you wanted to go live. All right, but you can hear me. It's cool. What's up? Cool. You can hear me loud and clear. All right, cool. So today we're going to do something a little different. I'm going to go over my thoughts about the show Young, Famous, and African. Okay, cool. So Anne-Marie Harding says she can hear me. Melanin Queen says she can hear me. Thumbs up. Cool. Yeah, so I'm definitely going to give you guys my thoughts and my opinions on the show from a high level. If you guys want to get deep into specific details on specific characters on the show, I'm definitely going to be going live with my favorite two people to go live with that I've gone live with more recently. You guys have been asking to hear more from them. So we're trying to work out the details of when that'll be since, and I'll get into that in a little bit, but I'll be traveling here soon. But yeah, I definitely want to go through our thoughts about the show, give you guys our thoughts about different characters on the show, different things going on. But I'm going to give you my high-level notes, my thoughts about it. If you haven't seen the show, definitely recommend watching it, just for a number of different reasons. We'll get to them in a second. But Young, Rich, and African is a Young, Famous, and African. Young, Famous, and African is a show that I think anybody should be watching, especially if you're in the diaspora. But even if you're not and you're here, it's a show that shows you certain aspects of some folks and their lifestyles here on the continent. All right, cool. So before we get into it, just a little bit of housekeeping. As you guys know, I started a new job recently. And so where I've been now is just getting my feet wet, as they say, really getting up to speed with the job. So I'm still working to get back on track with the 3 videos per week. I do plan to put out another video this week and then go live again this week. So I'll likely have 3 videos this week and at least 2 this week. Last week was only 1, but be out on the lookout for that. I'll definitely keep you guys posted. I also have a house update for you all, just a really quick update since we're still waiting for some folks to get on. The main update there is that the house is on the move. Things are happening. We started working on the gutter outside the front, and we're going to open up the gate, and I'm going to put an official gate on the property. Right now, the gate that's there is kind of like tin pans that are just like barely tied together and screwed on. We're going to do like a formal sliding gate at the property, like a serious sliding gate. And then it'll have a door in the gate. So like If you're just trying to walk through in and out, you can just use a key and open the door. But for a vehicle to come through, it'll have a sliding gate that opens because of the amount of space I have to drive into the property. I can't have a swinging gate like some properties do have. I'm going to have a sliding gate, so I have as much space as possible for people to back in and out and get into the property. So that's in the process of happening like right now. Before I get to Sierra Leone at the end of this month, I expect that the gate will be done on the property and the gutter will be done in the front. So that's the house update. I can give you guys a quick like little preview of what it looks like for the gate right now. Let me see if I can find quickly find a picture of it. Yeah, actually, let me just do this real quick. I'm going to share my screen so you guys can see what I'm talking about. Let's see. Share screen. Okay, let's see if it. All right, cool. So you guys can see my screen, right? So and if you are on Instagram, just head over to the YouTube channel and you'll be able to see what's on my screen. So really quickly, what you can see here is these guys started the process of digging out the gutter in the front. Where this location is, it's in the mountains a little bit, and the rain comes down like a torrential downpour, and the water is so aggressive that since that street isn't paved, it puts cracks in the street. So what we're doing is we are putting a new gutter in place in front of the property so that the water has a place to flow. If you look really closely at this image, you can see that there's a gutter that starts all the way up at the next property. There's a street here, and then here's where my property starts, where this part of the gutter is. So the water will be coming through here, and it'll dispose itself down through there. So so that was where we were yesterday. As of today, this is what it looks like now. So what they're doing here is they're putting the steel rods in place. They'll start putting wood on either side of this, and then they'll pour cement around it. So then that way you'll have a cement with basically the same materials you see at these steps. That will be the cement that's here. And that's where the runoff will go down to that gutter and all the way down there. So it no longer is on the street here on the right-hand side. So anyway, that's the update on the house. Everybody's been asking about that. So I thought I would share that really quickly. So so that's where we are in front of the property right now. When I get there later this month, we got electricity going on and going up into the caretaker's quarters, and the gate should be done. I'm trying to see if I have a picture of the gate or a gate that I'm looking at. Let me see if I can find an image so I can share it with you guys. It might be interesting to you guys. I'm just, while we wait till everybody gets on, I thought maybe I could share some images so you guys can see what I've been discussing with my contractor in terms of what kind of gate I might want. Let me see if I can find an image of it. It's a little hard to go back and do searches through WhatsApp, so I may or may not have it, and it's looking like I probably won't be able to download it. Let me see. Yeah, so I may not be able to download the images of the gates. Let me see. Okay, that's cool. Go site. Okay. Yeah, I don't think I'll be able to get some images of the gate, unfortunately, but I will share that with you in my next update, where I do like a vlog for like what's been going on and where we're at. Because a lot of people have been asking, like, what does the front gate gonna look like? What is all that gonna look like? So I'll do that on another live because I'm not able to find it right now. All right, cool. So with that, I think we should just get right into the content. So first, let me ask you guys this. Has anybody even watched Young, Famous, and African? Let me know. Okay, so everybody was just saying they can hear me clearly. Red Prince Jr. said he could hear me. Mr. Bounce Los Angeles saying he liked the post about B. Simone. Yeah, for sure. Moni said she didn't want to go live with me. That must have been an accident. But Well, let me know. Let me know. Type in your comments. Okay, so Mr. Bounce Los Angeles said he's never seen the show. Young, famous, and African. I definitely think you should check it out. I think you'll find it interesting. Um, there's a lot of people asking about how it's like what the show's about. So I'll give you guys a little bit of like how okay. So Tico Bailey says she hasn't watched the show either, or they said they haven't watched the show either. What about on YouTube? Everybody who's watching on YouTube, can you guys let me know if you've seen the show Young, Famous, and African? It's a Netflix series. I think they've done like they've done the show in part 1 and part 2 for this first season. All right. Well, while I wait to hear back from you guys, a couple of updates on travel. So, and this kind of goes back to the normal housekeeping that I do. So I am planning to go to Nigeria next week, Sunday or Monday or so. I'll likely be going, and I'll be there for about 3 weeks or so. Then from there, I'm going to Sierra Leone. I'll be in Sierra Leone all through the month of May. So of course I'm celebrating my birthday there, and then I'll be there through the month of May. Yeah, so I'll be gone from Ghana for the next, I don't know, 8 weeks or so. And then I'm back here for a couple of weeks at the end of May and early June. And then I have a Europe trip and then a US trip after that. Then I'm back again in August. So I'm basically doing a month and a half twice in the next basically 5 months where I'll be gone from Ghana. So content will be based on where I'm traveling and what I'm doing while I'm there. So I'll keep you guys posted on all of that. But I do plan to keep the lives as I have been keeping them. So you guys just stay tuned for all of that. I don't think none of that's changing. Just the topics of conversation will probably be changing a bit. Okay, so but I do really look forward to putting out some content from my travels to Nigeria over the next few weeks. You guys are gonna love it. And Jonah, I saw that you are here in Ghana. We'll definitely connect for sure before I leave. All right. So Lady Keen says, I have watched it. Okay. And Tino says, not yet. So Tino hasn't watched it yet. All right. So let me give you guys my thoughts. All right. I have a lot of thoughts. And I want to be clear on what I think. So I have taken notes as I watched the show. I was taking a lot of notes. And so anything specific to the subject matter of the show and like specifically what's happening within the relationships of the different people on the show, wildness. I will definitely express here. It's not here, sorry, on the live that I plan to do with Masa and Kenya. So at that point in time, I'll do that. But in the meantime, let's talk about the show overall. So let's talk about what I didn't like from the show first, and then we can talk about what I did like. Or what do you guys want to hear first? What I did like or what I didn't like? Before I do, let me just talk about the show in general, just to give you guys an idea of the show, right? Without giving too much away. It's a show about Gen X and millennials and maybe some Gen Z folks who are from the continent of Africa, mostly East and North, actually, and a few South Africans, and Uganda. We got Uganda, Zimbabwe, I think represented, South Africa represented, Nigeria is represented, and that's it. Those are the countries. Maybe Kenya. Did I get one Kenyan? Yeah. So those are all who are represented. In my mind, it seems as though they're doing this now, and they'll likely franchise it if it works well. So most of it was shot. Actually, all of it was shot in South Africa, right? And so that means that those that were from Nigeria, Kenya, elsewhere were in South Africa. Now, some of them lived there. Some of them came to visit for a period of time, I think, while shooting the show. If they're smart, they'll likely do a young, famous, and African South Africa, East Africa, West Africa, maybe even a North Africa. Maybe they'll do like different versions because those are the five major Central. There's also Central Africa. So there's like 5 major regions in Africa. And they all, even though each of their countries have many different tribes and they are different, These regions all have some form and sense of some kinds of similarities depending on neighboring countries and things like that. Anyway, in my mind, eventually that's where they'll get. Right now, they had to do it all in South Africa, so everyone traveled there for the show. So, what do I think about the show? Um, hmm. So, you guys tell me, what do you guys want to hear first? What I like about the show or what I don't like about the show? Let me know. Let me know in the comments what you want to hear first. I'm trying to get an idea of where I should go with this before I get started giving my commentary on the show. Because if you haven't seen it, I don't want to give too much away about the show if you're interested in watching, but I do want to give you my thoughts. Like, there are some like even suspenseful moments, and there are also some interesting items. So anyway, I'll start with what I don't like, since the first response I got was from Lady King, what you don't like, and she's seen it. So let me get what I don't like. All right, so here's what I don't like. One, the show talks about these folks. In the first episode, it gives you a brief introduction of everybody, right? So you know how they do any series pilot of any show, right? Especially a reality show. They give you a little bit about each person, right? Um, a few of them, right? Their stories are tied to their children's fathers or their ex-husbands, right? And that comes up in a little bit of the discussions, or their ex-boyfriends, right? Some of the women there. So a guy there is, they're not really sure what he does. They say he does business, but they didn't say what kind of business he does. So there's an implication of criminal activity, even with some of the women there, their exes, and how they've made their money. And one even says, well, I don't care, I'm a gangster, right? And I'm like, I just feel like, that's already furthering the stereotype of any Africans who've made any significant amounts of wealth has had to steal it. And listen, don't get me wrong, many have. But I'd like to see people who are represented that have done it the right way and aren't stealing it, at least in terms of how it's being represented, because not everyone is being represented that way, but some of the introductions were done that way. You have designers, you have artists, you have like boutique owners, things like that, people who own like online sites that sell products. So you have a little bit of a diversity there, but that was one of the pieces that I didn't like. And also, I don't think the show does enough to show people in their element how they're making it happen. There are so many hungry people on this continent. And, when they say representation matters, I think the correct representation matters, right? Like, not everybody is going to be a fashion stylist or an artist, a musician. However, if you see somebody working at their craft, it might give you a little bit of an understanding of what kind of work it takes to be able to achieve and attain the results that they have. And I feel like shows like this don't really do that. Really, what you get mostly is how they're spending their money, not how they've made their money. And for me, it's always been interesting to me to know how people have made their money, not necessarily how they spend their money. And with this show, what you get is how they spend their money. And it's fun, it's entertaining, don't get me wrong. It's a lot of fun to see how they spend their money, but I'd like to see how they made their money. So Tino was also saying that you wanted to hear what I don't like about the show first. So that's one element of it, right? The fact that in the first episode, a couple of times it made it almost as if they were glorifying illegal means for achieving wealth, and then the other part of it is like not really showing them working their craft. I think also, unfortunately, this is just how it is, but people don't really care to see too much of that. So I know you don't want to spend too much time on that, but they should spend some time. And so what you get is mostly like arguments and drama, right? And situations where people disagree with each other loudly and aggressively. And there's a lot of shade. People are very shady with each other. Very much like what you can expect from the Love and Hip Hops, the Basketball Wives genres of reality TV. But what you're seeing is like that version of it on the continent of Africa. You have people who are in relationships, people who are engaging in potential um, cheating, people who are potentially stabbing each other in the back for other people's former relationships, people who consider themselves friends. You get all of that, all of that. What you get in a friend circle is what you get on this show. And if you got people with big personalities and egos, then you're going to get a lot of interesting things that come from that. And so I would say that those are some of the things that you see play themselves out in this particular this show, at least this first half of the show. So that's what I would say is some of the things that I would find is like not that interesting or what I don't like about the show. Now let's talk about what I do like about the show, because I do want to make sure it's clear that there are positives from this show. Whether or not I have issues with certain elements of it, there are positives, because what it's doing is it's showing different aspects of the continent that you may not have seen, right? And not just the stereotypical elements that you've heard or mostly are shared on television, right? So let's talk about some of the good things. So one, a lot of pidgin is being spoken. So, like any reality show, right? They have these interviews that they do one-on-one with the camera, and there's a producer behind the camera asking them questions, right? And so you'll notice a lot of times those are either scripted or they give them a kind of a narrative based on the discussion that's happening. And then other times they just ask them questions, right? So it depends on the show. In this show, it seems as if there's just someone asking a question on the other end and they're just responding to it. What you notice is that one character, Annie, her husband is a famous artist, Two-Face or Two-Baba, right? Who sang African Queen. She speaks a lot of pidgin. And I think it's really interesting to hear pidgin on an international stage like that and on Netflix, where there are people watching this who don't really get access to that, right? Who are not aware of these different kinds of things. And pidgin has some similarities in some cases to English in some ways. So it's like if if you're watching a show that's based in Jamaica and you hear patois, right? I think it's good to just get that cultural piece because you don't really get that much of it in mainstream television, right? And media, that especially because what you get now is maybe a little bit of Afro beats, but not really any of that. So the other thing is the soundtrack. So speaking of that, right? I heard a lot of like popular South African songs that I've been listening to recently. I heard a lot of Afro beats. Even some traditional older African songs, West African songs that I know. And so like overall, what I really liked about it is that the show is really focused on young Africans. And so, you get a chance to see them in their element. You get a chance to see them living lavishly. And so there's a little bit of aspirational elements to the show, right? Now, some are a little gaudy and some are a little too flashy, in my opinion. But at the end of the day, right, this is what you're getting, right, when you're showing young people who have cash, right? Because every example they've ever had of anybody having cash is to show it off, right? So that's how I feel about that. So the music. Yeah, and just seeing African wealth, I think it's just good for the world to see. I mentioned on the last live that I did last Monday, I've had people ask me what kind of animals I see outside. I've heard some really ignorant questions in some of the people that I've either had as potential clients or even some of my coworkers. And it's not malicious. It's not with malintent. It's just they don't know any better, right? And so I think a show like this, what it does is it just shows a different side of Africa. You also get to see, like, when I say like flashy, I'm talking about big, 5-star hotels, banquets. You see cars, right? You either go to a dealership where all the cars are like at least 100,000 or more. These vehicles are very expensive vehicles, some $1 million vehicles, etc. in these car lots. And so you get a chance to see somebody going car shopping and like what that looks like. Obviously people entering into a scene, they're coming out of their vehicles. So you see some of the nicer vehicles that are available. in the world, and you see them displayed in reference to Africans and their wealth. And so I think that that's all really interesting. The dress, I mean, I will say these people dress better than any reality show I've seen. And I used to watch all the reality shows. I mean, at this point, I'm a little too old and a little too busy to watch reality TV like I used to. I'm watching this show for research, honestly, for this channel, and because I wanted to support the show. But I used to watch everything, all the shows, and like in terms of there's some people who have some comments to make about some other people's dress for specific occasions. But when you think about like every scene, every time they're on camera, dressed to the nines. I mean, obviously the women dress very well, but the guys, I saw some suits in there that I'm like, I want to buy that suit. I like that three-piece suit. I like that suit. There was so many different suits that I saw that I was like, man, this makes me want to get back on my suit game. It's been a long time since I've worn blazers and worn like suits like that. But watching this show really made me think I need to get back to wearing suits again. It was amazing to see the dress code. I mean, like seriously, no show. And you guys tell me if you've seen the show. Tell me what show that you've seen people dress better than the folks that were dressed on Young, Famous, and African. I mean, it is top notch. I don't know what brands they were. I don't care what brands they were wearing. I just know the clothes looked amazing. My guy, Chris Clark, what's up, bro? High Impact Sports, North Carolina. So yeah. So if you haven't seen the show, those are some of the good parts. And then there's something else I want to mention too. Oh, just seeing people of wealth that are younger, my age or younger, right? Because most of the time what you see is people in their 40s or 50s who've achieved a certain level of wealth, attained some form of success, financial success. And what was great about this is seeing people in my age or younger really like stepping out and showing that it can be done. And like I said, the dress code was it was amazing. So I definitely recommend it just for that. Lady King says, make it happen, Joe. Get on your suit game. I'm here for it. Yeah. So I got suits. I definitely got suits, but I haven't had to use them. I haven't had to wear my suits in probably like 2 years. Like I only wear suits to weddings these days, but I got a couple of blazers. And so I think I want to get back on my suit game though. After seeing this, it's like I'm going back to wearing pocket squares, wearing suits, ties, the whole thing. That really got me thinking like I need to get back into the suit game. It was just like you guys have to see the show. Top notch. I don't know if these guys already had this stuff in their houses, if they work with stylists, but like if you want to get a visual representation of what the best parts of Africa can look like in terms of appearance, just in terms of like dress code, this show is definitely it. So I can't say that enough because that's my favorite part of the show. I caught myself like screenshotting the show thinking like, all right, I need to find a three-piece suit like that color with those shoes, the pocket square and the tie. I'm like, I'm doing that. And for a long time I lived in New York, and that's how I used to dress when I was in New York. I would see like a mannequin at a store. I'd pass a Tom Ford store and I'd say, okay, I like that. Take a picture of it. Or like if I'm on my commute on the way to work and I would just like take a little picture, or I'd take a note to myself and write down what I saw. And that's how I used to put my style together, right? What I really like to see out there. And like I would do that. And with this show, I'm like, I don't even need to do that anymore. Just everything I saw on that show. I like all the different styles, like sweaters with suit jackets, three-piece suits, everything. Turtlenecks, even with suit jackets, what I never thought I would do, but I saw a couple versions of that. So I'm like, all of that, I'm into it. Shoes, the whole thing. So those are the other things that I would mention for sure is the dress code on the show is top notch. Better, like I said, tell me I'm wrong. Anybody who's seen this show, better than any reality show, and I'm talking about Love and Hip Hops. I'm talking about Basketball Wives, Football Wives, all of the reality shows, all of the reality shows. I haven't seen any better dressed people, and so that made me proud. Now there's some other elements that I could do without, as it pertains to backstabbing in relationships, but overall, I thought it was great. Shayna Wise says hi. What's up, Shayna Wise? Stress Zone just joined. Coker 5371 just joined. What's up? What's up? Yeah, yeah. So, Lady King, I know you've seen the show. Let me know what you like or don't like about the show. Is anybody else on Instagram Live or YouTube Live seen Young, Famous, and African? If you have, can you tell me what you think of the show? I definitely want to hear from you what you think of the show. So put in the comments. Let me know what you think. I'd really like to hear it. And if you agree with me on the wardrobe and the outfits on the show, I'm not even a person who normally talks about how people dress, but like it stands out that much that it's worth talking about. So what do you guys think? Let me know. But yeah, and also it gave more exposure. I'll say this too. It gave some exposure to artists that and people that I'm not as familiar with. So like there's Diamond Platinum that I wasn't familiar with. I'm not even gonna start going through the names anyway, because we'll do a deep dive into specific characters on another live because this thing is wild. There's bro code breaking. There's massive number of baby moms. There's that. There's X is still in the picture. There's backstabbing. There's shade. I mean, it's all of the makings of an interesting reality show that people like to watch. It has all of that and more. So for sure, I think it'll be interesting to those of you who are into that kind of stuff and who also just want to see what it might look like to see Africans doing their thing. You know, what I'd love to see is at some point other countries can be represented. So that I'm hoping that can be the case. So Shayna Wise says she's new here. Shout out to Shayna. Thanks for joining. My guy Espiritu Santo just joined. Espiritu Santos, I should say. What's up, Jordan? So yeah, so I was just talking about the show Young, Famous, and African. Jordan, you got to watch that show. You got to watch that show. It's on Netflix, Young, Famous, and African. If you haven't seen it, you got to watch it. It's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah. So okay, so we got some comments about the show. Actually, we don't. We just got people saying hi. Abu Bakar Kamara says hi. What's up, Abu? Abu, have you seen Young, Famous, and African? Has anybody watching it seen Young, Famous, and African? Shayna Wise says, yeah, it would be nice, like representing surname. Yeah, I would love to see West Africans. Sorry, Suriname. I don't know who Suriname is either. So yeah, Shayna Wise, who's Suriname? See, this is why it needs to be. Okay, so Lady King says, I must be brief because this will not allow me to type too much text. I stumbled upon the show by accident. I love the sceneries and the places. Check out when I visit Joburg. I discovered the Blue Train. Okay, so those things are all interesting and cool. Yeah. What did you think about the dress? What did you think about the show in general? Like how, like representation of Africans, all of that. I would love to hear, Lady King. Okay, Shayna Wise says, I haven't seen it yet. I live in Amsterdam. Shout out to you in Amsterdam. In my early 20s, I used to talk about going to Amsterdam all the time because of the liberal nature of the cannabis consumption that happens in that country. I still haven't been to Amsterdam yet. I'll be in Europe though this year, but I won't be in Amsterdam. Okay, Suriname is a South America. Oh, it's well, okay. The show Young, Famous, and African is about Africa in particular. So they wouldn't be having anybody from Latin America on there. They would have to do a show like Young, Famous, and Latin American for that. But yeah, so they wouldn't have any representation of artists like that. I'm talking about West African artists, or even seeing maybe even North Africans. I don't think people really understand the dynamics between Sub-Saharan Africa and Northern Africa, Central, East, and South, and how different they all are, and how many different countries make up each of those areas. But I like, in my mind, I think that if this show does well, they will probably franchise out. So Abu Bakar says, first time to get you live and really impressed with the entire program. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it, Abu Bakar. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Yeah, I'm trying my best to try to give you guys interesting content and to have conversations with you all. Part of this is just to engage with you all so you guys can ask me questions about what it's been like to move here. But since I do it all the time, I do take time to do specific topics each week to talk about things that are happening that are a part of the conversation in Africa and the diaspora, and especially what's happening here. So Shayna Wise, yeah, I can tell you've been smoking Shayna Wise. No, so Shayna Wise says, okay, so Ghana will be represented. Not on this show. What I was saying is, if in fact this show does well, they'll likely probably franchise it, because every show does that, right? Love and Hip Hop was just called Love and Hip Hop. Eventually it became Love and Hip Hop New York, Miami. Just same thing with Black Ink, or the same thing with Basketball Wives, and the same thing with Housewives, right? All these different shows ended up getting franchised because of the success of the original. And so I do think if this does well, they can be in certain regions, and that could be more interesting, right? Like if they're in Nigeria, maybe if they choose that as the hub of West Africa, or maybe they choose Accra, I don't know. But then you have like other people from West Africa represented, and you can have a contingent of like 6 to 9 people that are West African. Then you could do it in East Africa, maybe Nairobi, right? Because that seems to be a place where people in East Africa tend to flock to, or maybe somewhere in South Africa, they're already doing it in Joburg. Central Africa, I don't know where they would do it, but that's what I'm thinking, right? I think if it goes well, they'll likely do that. So we'd like to see it. But yeah, so I'd love to yeah, so I'd love to see how it does. It'll be interesting. I'm not on the show, of course. I'm just watching. I'm not nearly famous enough to be on that show. All right, so Lady King says, I did love the dress, and the one dude did represent with putting his suits together, so I know what you mean. Love this turtleneck with the blazer. Yeah. So yeah, the suits, top notch for sure. Like, if you don't know anything about the show, watch the show. I'm not going to get into the details here. This weekend, I'll be going live with 2 folks, and we'll talk about everybody. Boss Lady. I see somebody, Marish is on, so she knows about Boss Lady. So we'll talk about Boss Lady. We'll talk about Annie and what she went through and her situation. We'll talk about all of that, because I don't want to talk about the relationship element of it. Just me. I want to have two women show, like, from their side how they see these things. So I'll dive deeper into that, because there's a lot there to unpack as it pertains to the relationships, the budding relationships, the past relationships, the rocky roads through other relationships. All of that is displayed on this show, and it for sure is addressed. I mean, it's interesting. Scandals are addressed. Things that were the big in the headlines and news stories here on the continent are addressed by the people who went through them on either side. So that's interesting to see. So yeah, all of that's good. All right. So Bruce, I think, is it Spruill? I'm in complete shock how much deprogramming I've been undergoing about the African continent. So, Bruce, did you see the show? Is that why you're saying that? Let me know, because I'm interested to hear what caused you to say that. Because I'm interested to see, like, what maybe if it was the show or something else that that caused you to see otherwise? That's really interesting that you said that, because let's unpack that a little bit, because I want to talk about that. Lady Keen says, I didn't like that it was like your typical American style reality show. I was hoping it would be different, especially since African culture is said to be drama free. The women were very Americati. Yeah. So I don't think that those things are exclusive to Americans. Yeah, I think in West Africa, the pigeons, a lot of them say like Kongosa, right? So like the Ghanaians have their own version of that word in pidgin, their pidgin. Nigerians have theirs, Sierra Leoneans and our Creole, we have that word. But basically like the gossip, right? It's gossip. And for sure, it happens everywhere, every culture, all around the world. It's just a part of human nature. So you're going to get cattiness, you're going to get gossip, you're going to get jealousy, and you're going to get people who misunderstand each other. And when you add alcohol, which is what all these shows do, if you notice, most of the time they shoot shots at dinner scenes, at parties, at banquets where alcohol is being consumed. And when alcohol is being consumed, people are a little bit looser with the tongue, right? They'll say things that they may not be thinking all the way through before they say it, right? So what you get is you get a lot of engaged arguments, to say the least. People not articulating themselves the way they like. People being a little bit embarrassed by how they've acted, things like that. Those things happen across the board. I think especially television is pretty formulaic, unfortunately. And so, yeah, you're going to get a lot of the same style of things that you see in Western reality television. So that's the challenge that I get what you're saying, Lady Keen. And that was the issue that I said I didn't like. That's one of the issues I think I saw too with the show, was that I felt like you had a lot of that same formula that you get from other shows. But, you know, the other thing is there's a little bit of this too. And I think I'd have to be careful how I say this, because I don't want this to come off in any way because I was born and raised in the United States. But the number one export from the United States is Black American culture, right? Whatever that looks like in all the different forms, music, arts, and fashion, right? That's the number one export from the United States. So when we're talking about people that are Generation X down to and millennials and Gen Z, there are a lot of things that are going to potentially be picked up, right? There are going to be phrases and terms that are used that come from Black American culture, like people talking about being shady, right? And things like that. You just have that, you know, shade. But there are things that cultures borrow from each other, right? And so, but yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, it is set up very much like westernized reality TV. It is, because that's the formula right now that seems to be working, and that's what they do. But that was why I said I wish they would have shown more about how people are working, right? Like all you get is like, I don't want to get too deep into the details of the show. I'll get there later. But the show right now, to me, I think is like they're trying to draw people in by giving you everything you're used to seeing, but with different people displaying those things. I'm hoping that they dig a little deeper into these people's careers and how they've attained the level of success that they have, not just their sex life or their love lives, right? Like I'd love to see more about like how they've attained their success, the work that went into it. That's what I really want to see. So Lady Keen says the show is very westernized. I'll definitely check out season 2 if there is one. Hopefully there is. And just for everybody joining, we are talking about Young, Famous, and African, the show. As I mentioned a little earlier, but I'll mention it to you all because there's some new people joining. On this live, I'm just talking about the show as a whole. I'm not getting too deep into the individual relationships and the characters. I'll do that on this Saturday if I can get with Kenya and Masa this weekend on Saturday before I leave. I would love to like dive deeper into the different relationships and the hardships, because man, there's a lot to unpack there, just in terms of what was put up with, um, that I see people in the U.S. say they would never put up with. So those kinds of things I definitely want to talk about because I'm interested to hear how many of you in the diaspora would handle some of the same situations that happen in the show, and we'll talk about it for sure. Okay, so Menelik says, "Peace, Joe. I have a question regarding something outside of today's subject. I'll inbox you on IG. You can also ask me on you can ask me on here too, because the second part of this is ask me anything. So we're on this topic for now, but you can ask me anything. That is the purpose of this. I just usually do the ask me anything once people are done talking about the topic at hand, but you can feel free to ask me here if you want. I have no problem answering any other questions. So Lady King says, yes, agree about Black export because they had the hip hop slang and attitude down. One of the women was twerking on the last episode. She was. She was. She was also, yeah. Was it the last episode or even the first episode? But yeah, so for sure, there's definitely a Western influence for sure on just some of the speech, just all of that, right? I mean, Black culture has been exported all around the world, and it's the most popular culture globally, right? It just is. What's up, Cali Calv? And YMCMB 1955 just joined. I haven't seen you guys in a while. Today we're talking about young, famous, and African. Have you guys seen the show? A couple of you guys just joined. Let me know if you guys seen the show and what you think of it. We're talking about what we think of the show. If you've seen it, the good, the bad, the ugly. As I said, and I'll repeat it one more time, today I'm just talking about the show overall, and not necessarily the specific characters. What's up, Cali Calv? Let me know if you've seen the show, Young, Famous, and African on Netflix. I'm interested to hear your. Oh, you haven't? Oh man, you got to watch it. I need to hear your thoughts. Okay, so one of the other things that came up 2 weeks ago, I think it was when I was on live, or was it last week? When I was on live with Masa and Kenya, and people were talking about the bleaching of the skin. And yeah, it's clear that, or it seems pretty evident, I can't tell, that at least 2, maybe 3 of the main characters have used skin bleaching. And this conversation came up recently on the lives, and the ones who were mostly doing it were the women. And so what I think, and I can't speak for them, but Masa and Kenya were saying is like, I'm not going to tell another woman what to do with their bodies, right? Like they get plastic surgery, they lighten their skin, all different kinds of other things. And I do think that is a deeper issue that cannot be solved in just a couple of conversations. There are inherent challenges with having this kind of conversation like in a vacuum like this. It's a larger discussion that has a lot to do with colonialism and subconscious and conscious belief systems that whiter is better, complexion protection, as I used to say. And I think a lot of people just have that. And I actually got that from my sister. I didn't make that up. She got it from somewhere, I'm sure. But I used to say it because my sister used to say it all the time. But it's a thing, And so, it is one of the things that came up about talking about this show. All right. So, yes, there were a few episodes where they broke out the twerk. Yes, there were. South African culture is a bit more African American than West African culture and media. Maybe so. I mean, I know in South Africa, they call soccer, right? Whereas everywhere else I've talked to on the continent, they call soccer football. But in South Africa, they call soccer. So that was interesting because they actually mentioned the word soccer on the show. And I was like, yeah, I forgot that South Africans call it soccer. Miss P, what's up? Have you seen Young, Famous, and African? If you have, let us know and what you think about the show. I want to hear what people are thinking about the show. I want to hear from you guys what you think. Was it a good representation of us? Was it not? Oh, Cali Calv, it's on Netflix. It's on Netflix. It's one of the top 10 shows, if I'm not mistaken. So you'll find it. Yeah. Is it? Do you guys think it was a good representation? What do you guys think? I will tell you, in my mind, I think good and bad. You got examples of interesting parenting styles that was called into question from the very first episode. Um, yeah, which I want to talk about this weekend. So yeah, so you guys are gonna check it out on Netflix. Definitely check it out. So Miss P hasn't seen it yet. You gotta watch at least an episode or two. Because this Saturday, if I can, I want to go live and I want to talk about deep dive into characters, relationships, all of the above. That is coming. I would do a live about that with those two. Um, if not a live, then we're gonna record pre-recorded content and then it'll come out later. But since it's kind of timely and it's not like a weekly show, it's something that people are binge watching. I'd love to talk about it. All right, cool. Any questions for me about anything, about my life here, about how I feel about the show? Any questions? I'll more than happy to answer them. If not, we're getting closer towards the end of the live today. I'm starting to see more people are getting on the live, of course. I see you guys joining. But yeah, so I will. Sorry, 1 second. Yeah, so for sure. Um, Let me know if you have any questions, thoughts about anything we've talked about today, or any ideas. Or sorry, anything we've talked about today, and what's going on. Okay, so what's happening in the news out here? That's a loaded question. What's happening in the news out here? A lot's happening in the news out here. Are you asking specific to Ghana? Because there's a few stories Ghana specific that I can talk about for sure. Um, like for instance, there's no narrative. You're late. You're so late. Have you seen Young, Famous, and African? And if you have, tell me what you think. Flower Child, I see you just joined. If you've seen Young, Famous, and African, tell me what you think. Mariama Forbes, I see you joined. If you've seen Young, Famous, and African, please tell me if you like the show and if you think it is a good representation. If you think it's a good representation of Africans, I'd love to hear it. So a couple things in the news really quickly while I get everyone's thoughts on Young, Famous, and African, since everyone seems to be joining almost an hour in. My cousin Jaya Kai Kai is a little late. What's up, bro? Jaya, have you seen Young, Famous, and African? And let me know what you think. Mariama Forbes, I definitely want to know what you think. Please tell me what you think. She says, I'm here. All right. So really quickly, one thing. So president here of Ghana commissioned a state-of-the-art Nissan assembly plant in Tema. Tema is where like a bunch of plants are. It's not too far outside of Accra. I've been there a number of different times in my capacity as the head of advertising at Jumia Ghana, where we would go to Belakwa's plant. We went to Wilmar. A bunch of different plants are out there, but they're building a car plant out there. So that's interesting. There was also a toll road. It was hilarious. There's a video of the president of Ghana. I'm trying to see if I can find the video where he's doing this thing. It's hilarious. It's the funniest thing I've ever seen. I've never seen a president do anything like that, but the funniest thing I've ever seen. And I don't do it any justice doing that because I'm trying to go from memory. But if you can just imagine just seeing what I just did, if you can imagine a president doing that. And he was talking about miles of road that has been built out. Hilarious. So you guys, anyway, that's the two major news stories that I've been seeing that have been going viral. Let me know if there's anything else I'm missing, anybody who's in Ghana right now. But those are the two stories that I know of. All right, so let's get to some of the comments. So there's a bunch. Okay. So Flower Child Size, it just reminds us how much we all have in common regardless of our backgrounds. This is in regards to saying when you're watching Young, Famous, and African, how similar it can be sometimes to Western culture, like Black American culture, I think is what you're saying, right, Flower Child? Tino says, what do you think about the fuel crisis in Sierra Leone? Okay, so I'll answer that. What do I think about it? I think it's a problem. I think it's a huge problem. And there's a couple of things that are challenges here. One, Sierra Leone is very dependent on other nations for its oil, right? And that's just a fact. Now, according to the First Lady, which you guys might remember a very spirited discussion with Massa and Kenya about what was said. And according to the First Lady, she says that all of the gas stations or fuel stations are owned by the previous administration. They own all of them. Maybe that is true. I don't know. But as was said on that live, I think we need to do a better job as Sierra Leone going and seeing how other people are getting it. And we need to be problem solvers, not blaming other people about why things aren't working. So I do think in Sierra Leone, it's a major issue. People can get fuel, but it's not easy, and there are problems. There are many problems. Many fuel stations don't have it. So I'll have more to say on that in less than 3 weeks when I'm there, and maybe a little over 3 weeks when I'm there, and I can give you an on the ground analysis. As of right now, I'm just getting secondhand news about it. All right, really quickly. Mariama Forbes gives me a short. I liked it, but they could have done better. That's on Young, Famous, and African, the show. All right, so No Narrative is saying she's late. Yes, you are. Yes, you are late. But I do want to hear what you think about the show. Flower Child says, what about American culture? What is it about American culture that is so appealing to everyone? So I think that there's something interesting about, in particular, Black American culture, stemming from the early days of music in America and how it's just cooler than every other in America. Most of it was born out of pain, but it developed into really popular genres, right? And that then became global, worldwide sensations, but mostly white artists utilizing the talents and or styles of Black culture even back then. We're talking about, everyone talks about how Elvis Presley was basically mimicking Black rock and roll, blues, jazz. Like most people, when they think of jazz, like if you think of like a recent jazz artist, a lot of people will say like Kenny G, right? Kenny G is the guy, I guess he plays the saxophone or something, but like that's not actually jazz, right? Jazz is a big genre of music and it's mostly a Black genre, but other people do it. Think about R&B music, right? R&B of the 90s was, Drew Hill, Boyz II Men, Case, Carl Thomas, right? Wow. Now all the names are escaping me because I'm getting old, but you guys got the idea, right? Think about like what that R&B is now. Adele, Sam Smith, whenever Timberlake comes out, Bieber, Ed Sheeran, like that is now this. And so that always happens, and it starts in music. Now, the difference I think with hip hop culture was that it wasn't just the music, it was also the dress and the style and what really picked up, and that leads the way. And since the US is where it started, and now it's exported everywhere around the world, right? And so the patterns of speech, the dress code, the attitude, all of that is something that is just really appealing to people. For me, it was the genre of music I listened to exclusively at one point. And really, it's still my favorite music. And so I believe that is the same for many other people. But it's like, it's one type of music that if you don't know a song, you have a fear of missing out. Like if someone is like, have you heard the new X song or album, and you haven't heard it, you get this FOMO. And so it's just not cool to not be up on it, right? And so for me, I've kind of aged out of that, but I know that that's a genre of music that has that. I don't think country music has that, right? I don't think some of the versions of rock and roll as they are today doesn't really have that as much. So I think that that's why it's probably America's biggest export. And you have people from all socioeconomic statuses that want to be the cool people. If you think about someone like Jay-Z, Jay-Z is NFL owners wanted to know Jay-Z because they will be cool to their children, nieces and nephews and their grandchildren if they know and meet Jay-Z, right? You have somebody like Martha Stewart who has a show with Snoop, right? It's just that culture is where everybody wants to be a part of it. One, it makes money, and two, it's just cooler than everyone else's in the US. Now it's interesting because the US is kind of like one of the places that does lead the way on a lot of different things. And so people in other places do like to mimic what happens in the United States. For instance, the international ban on cannabis started mostly with the United States. Most other people didn't even have an issue with cannabis in their countries and have laws pertaining to them. Most countries didn't, but the US kind of started that process and many other countries followed. So that just happens a lot. So the US exports a lot of things. It's a world leader in a lot of things. It is not the number one country in the world. I think there are other nations that are now eclipsing it, but in terms of its culture, it's the number one export, and that's why it's so. In my opinion, I think that is why it's so appealing to other people. I hope I answered that question. It was a long answer. Jaya said he was late. He hasn't seen the show. Lady Keen says eggs are going up due to some crisis with eggs. All groceries in the U.S. are an all-time high. Oh yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. There's inflation everywhere right now. Everywhere there's inflation. Imports, export businesses, they're all just in, because when you have a higher demand than you have supply, prices go up. So prices are up right now on everything. I'm in the middle of building a house, and I just had to pay $100 extra for the same work 2 weeks later than what it was 2 weeks before. Okay, Abu Bakar Kamara is saying, what's your best experience in Africa? That's a good question. Okay, what's my best experience in Africa? My best experience in Africa so far on the continent, to be honest with you, my best experience has been the history, learning the history. It's not one experience, it's been many. Because I've been learning about Sierra Leone history and only my own family history a lot over the last year and a half. So that's one element. Then you have Ghanaian history and how impressive their first president was and how this country was structured and set up. And then you have Egypt. I went to Egypt November of last year, the most famous history on the continent globally, and got a chance to hear more about that. Although there's a lot of disputes about what's real, what's not, obviously. But just overall, just to see what I got a chance to see, I saw artifacts that were over 4,000 years old. That's crazy to see. To be able to see something up close like that, to touch things that are over 2,000 years old, that's just wild. So those to me are some of the better experiences. I mean, socially, my social life has been pretty fun too. And I'll leave it at that. That's been fun. But like the most important thing and the things that I really got the most out of my experience was really the historical element, like learning about history and culture here. So rich with history and culture. Every country, every tribe does. And it's just amazing to see. No Narrative says, no, I have not. You haven't seen the show. Now you have something to binge watch. Yes, binge watch. We will discuss this weekend if you join the live. Oh, Mariama Forbes jumped over to the YouTube live. Shout out to her. Came from the IG live to the YouTube live. All right, so Manalik's question was, my question is about work residence permits. Wanted to know if you apply for work before applying for the permits. So my job actually applied for my work permit for me and gave me my resident permit. However, my permit was tied to that company. So since I'm no longer employed by that company, I am no longer, as far as I understand, a resident. I could be wrong, but I may not be. So, excuse me. So something to keep in mind. But yeah, I did it through my job first. So I don't know what the residence and work permit process looks like to do it before you have it with a company, but I'm sure that's available on Ghana's immigration website. They have a lot of good information. Okay. Lady Keene said, I did love how the Nigerian woman wore her natural hair opposed to weave. Also, she looked very beautiful. Her situation in pain is common to most women. Sad she is enduring that in a marriage. Oh, yeah, we're going to talk about that. Masa is here. Masa is here. So, Masa and Kenya, we are going to talk about this. We're going to talk about all of the elements of that show. But Lady Keene was saying, so the Nigerian woman, her name is Annie, and Annie did wear her natural hair. She had short hair. Yeah, I do see a lot of people wearing natural hair here, which I do like to see. But however you like to wear your hair is fine with me. No problems over here. Just making that very clear. But yeah, she did wear her natural hair most of the time. She did sometimes wear wigs and stuff like that. But yeah, most of the time that you saw her on camera, at least when she was filming or what was edited, was her wearing her natural hair for sure. Oh, I see. Now I'm realizing what Masa is trying to get at. Meeting Masa in Kenya is your best experience. It's up there. It's up there. It's ranking. It's ranking up there. Masa, I got to tell you about something. You upset somebody. The last time we all hung out at Chima's place, she told me last night. I'll have to tell you about it. She had a few to drink, and she was very upset by you, Masa. She said, "These Americans, they say stuff about us in Ghana." I will say this about Ghanaians, guys. Ghanaians are very sensitive about when you talk about their country. And even if you are someone who's West African and you mean no malice and you're just speaking your truth, they will tell you they don't like to hear about it. And so, Masa, I gotta tell you about this. Hilarious, hilarious. It was pretty funny last night, but I'll tell you about it. Anyway, Lady King says, no, it's Kenya. Kenya. But Lady Keene is this because Kenya is, I think, Lady Keene's real name, right? I think that might be why she's asking. I answered Abu Bakar's question. Okay. Masa says, hi. Yes, we sure are going to talk about this. I have so much to talk about Annie's situation. Ooh, Lord. Yes. Yes. I'm not going to do the woo Lord the way you would do it. Only you can do it the way you would do it. But yeah, we got to talk about this. We got to talk about this. And so I think I've told you guys on our little group chat, I am not going to talk about the specifics of the relationships on this live. I'm just talking about the overall show, but I will get to the specifics. I want to talk about it with you two because you guys have that pepper soup, and you guys have talked about relationships and different experiences in relationships, and there's a lot to unpack, and the differences between what people in the U.S. would be willing to take and what people on the continent, at least from what I've seen so far, are willing to deal with. Even me, Masa, and Kenya have had this conversation before in terms of my dating experience in Africa versus most of my dating experiences in the U.S. and how it's just different. It's different. We'll get into it. We will do a deep dive this weekend for sure. Spear Warrior says greetings. What's up, Spear Warrior? Thanks for joining. We're talking about young, rich, and African, young, famous, and African. What your thoughts are on the show? Is it a good representation of Africans for the world? What you like about the show? What you didn't like about the show? I went through my likes and dislikes, high level for those of you who are just joining. Overall, I think the show is necessary and it's good to have. There are some gripes with it, like all they do is argue and fight. A lot of drama, but there are stories. There are real stories in there. I also wish they would do more about like how they achieve their wealth, not just how they spend their wealth. But is a lot to talk about in terms of how relationships are perceived a lot of times on the continent and how they're handled. Oh, I got a lot to say, and I'm not gonna say it here. I'm not gonna say it here. All right. Somebody says, "Well, I said whatever I said, and I am not sorry." Let her know I didn't. I don't apologize. Masa. I'll let her know. I'll let her. I'll let her know. Um, no, there was a little bit of like loud Americans, and I had to stick up for my family people, mis salon people, and explain that we're not just Americans. We have good context. They've lived in Sierra Leone. They are Sierra Leonean. See, what she heard was through the lens of thinking these are just ignorant Americans here talking. So that's what she heard. Anyway, we'll talk about it, and then we'll probably talk about it on the live when I'm with Masa and Kenya later, whenever that is, sometime this weekend, because I think it might be interesting to have that discussion too, a little bit about cultural differences and how that comes across, and even the discussion was had instead of having it at that moment, it was had later. And the thing is the discussion was being had without knowing that I knew the two and that I brought the two people to the event. So it was interesting. It was only one person feeling that way. Nobody else felt that way, by the way. So Lady Keen says she can't wait to hear Masa talk about the Annie situation. Spear Warrior says your cast the replay. Dope. No Narrative says just came back. Ignorant Americans, let me go. Masa said it's giving alcohol and God. Gotcha. No Narrative. Later, Joe. Where you going? No Narrative. Where you going? But thanks for stopping by. Always a pleasure to have you. All right, cool. Well, guys, the live has been going for now 1 hour and 12 minutes. Is there anything? Okay, here, let me get back because this is funny. Okay, LOL. She may not remember exactly what I said. If it's the girl I'm thinking of, I'm just saying. Is that what IJS says? You know, I'm an old man when it comes to internet acronyms. You can't be hitting me with the internet acronyms like that. Yes, it was. Yes, you're right. There was some alcohol and cannabis consumption by her, and so she definitely got a feeling. Didn't really hear everything because even last night there was more of the same, and she was trying to recall the discussion. And since I was stone cold sober for most of these discussions, I had a different perspective. I also know you guys too, so I had a different perspective. Okay, so IJS does stand for I'm just saying. I caught it. I got it. Cool. All right, cool. Any other comments, questions about Young, Famous, and African, or any other questions you guys want to ask me about my experience living here or what I think about the show? Any other questions, comments? So Masa's going back to the discussion about someone being offended by what she said. Being the lawyer she is, she says she's what I would call an unreliable witness. Correct. Full recollection of the incident. You're not going to get full recollection of the incident because they were under the influence. So they would be considered an unreliable witness when it came to questioning or in the court of law, I would imagine as well. Okay, cool. Any more questions, comments, thoughts, questions about my experience on the continent, in Ghana in particular? If not, we can bring this thing to a close pretty soon. There's always one last question before I go. Okay, so Masa's saying this was great. I binge watched the show and I agree with your views. Cool. And so I'm really looking forward to diving deeper into the relationship elements. I'm really looking forward to that because I think it's gonna be a really good conversation with you two. Because you guys are both really animated and it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun. But can't wait to get into the T, i.e., baby mama drama. Yeah, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of future. There's a couple of futures on this show. Talk to you soon. All right. All right, guys. If that's it, it looks like these are all the questions, comments, thoughts. I want to thank you guys all for joining. I always appreciate you guys joining and adding your always thoughtful feedback. If you like this content, you want to share it with anybody you know, make sure they know to subscribe. Make sure you subscribe, you like, and comment. And I will see you all on the next video.